What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the Daily Transcendence podcast. I'm G.O.D.
And I'm Ray.
And we're your hosts. Take a journey with us into the realms of some of humanity's most inner thoughts and theories about what lies before us and beyond the other side. Take a step back with us from the day-to-day heavy burdens of this constant evolving life. From awakening the collective, astrology, the spiritual divine, holistic health, shamanism, and quantum theory, to the frequencies and vibrations of our universe, history, religion, numerology, and so much more.
We spend countless hours researching to bring you the breakdown of information from some of the greatest minds in these fields and even our own experiences. We're here to challenge your thoughts so that you can reshape your own minds and beliefs into ones that better serve you.
We hope you enjoy the discussions about the supernatural and the ancient knowledge that we have become so fond of, and we wish to share with you so that it may also help you on your quest in this human experience we're living. Let the transcendence begin. Godspeed and share on. Don't forget to like, follow, and share on our Facebook and Instagram at The Daily Transcendence. Make sure you stay up to date and get notified on new episodes and more content by liking and subscribing on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and many more. We want to hear from you all and connect, so message us or email us at thedailytranscendence@gmail.com. As always, we entirely appreciate your support in allowing us to bring to you this transmission.
And we're back.
Hello. What's going on, Ray? It's been a while.
Dude, again. I know we waited a long time for this.
It's all right. We got some things.
Got a lot of things.
Some tings.
I mean, even off-topic things.
Yes.
I had a fun few weeks. You know, I do recall back on episode 3. I said, "Oh, I had this dream," or no, it was about the astrology in football, and I said, "Oh, the Bucks."
That's right.
Might win the Super Bowl because of this little astrological placement that had happened the last time they won the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. And it's on record. So that was cool. So just put it this way, for a whole week I was a football head because I'm a Bucks fan. So that's part of it. So you can be a little upset with me for slacking there.
We're swinging along with the energy, though. We got lives. You got lives too, you know?
Yeah, of course. You know, it's not all about just the information. It's about living the dream. But we do want to get back on the horse, you know, jump back on the saddle and get things rolling again. So we were studying and trying to come up with the next, you know, season of episodes that we wanted, the next topic.
Yeah, which, speaking of episode 3 and around those episodes with origins of beliefs and even a lot of the journey of the ages and the biblical stuff, there's something that we want to go into a little bit deeper now. And it has a bit of a relation as we go through this series on, there's an importance to it because of the fact that it gives us an insight as far as our actual origins and our human capabilities that we spoke of in the previous episodes, relating to certain findings within our DNA and our biochemistry, that we see that there is this innate intelligence there. So now with this episode in this series, there's more that we're going to touch up as far as the origins, and more so an in-depth theory, and also a big, I think it's somewhat a popular finding, and it's literally the creation story. It has a lot to do with, you know, the initial creation of time and certain energies that are portrayed, along with celestial things, but also the creation of humanity on Earth, and a lot of the ancient findings on that go older than just your biblical teachings and older than just any sort of Vedic or ancient Egyptian type teachings. It goes further back to that. And what we're talking is more of the Sumerian story and the Ancient Sumerians, how they depicted things, and the Akkadian religions way back when. So this has a lot to do with even the story of the Anunnaki, the information that's within the Sumerian Tablets on that. But then also later on in the series, we'll go into even the Emerald Tablets, the Book of Enoch, and we'll show the correlations of how they all connect kind of with the Great Flood, as well as the Book of Enoch. And the Book of Enoch is going to be an important thing that really ties together all these different ancient texts and writing to what we now see in the Bible. And like I said, we're going to go into creation and the Garden of Eden as well, and even just a very strange phenomenon that happened when it comes to our DNA. But in this one, we're going to go into the origins of humanity, as told by the Sumerian Tablets stories, and the whole story of the Anunnaki. And we're going to explain who the Anunnaki were, according to these readings, as well as other certain researchers and authors on their theory, plus giving our own little insight based off these theories.
Right. And what had us really interested in this in the first place was the fact that there were so many parallels, so many things connecting different stories. And we had mentioned that back in episode 3, where, a big part of my journey and getting more into this was the fact that I've noticed parallels and things that had connected to other cultures around the world in different times, and using my logical side of my brain saying, hey, like, this story sounds similar to this other story, but they're coming from a completely different part of the world, and they didn't have Facebook or, emailing back then to say, hey, I'm writing this story and about this guy or about this civilization or this god, and, I want you to do a rendition of it for me, because we want to spread the message. No, these stories show up all over the world at different times, and because they're so similar, is that kind of initiates the big mystery about them. And the Sumerian story and the Anunnaki, they have such grand, they hold much water over the fact that we exist. They possibly are the reason, and a lot of it has to do with DNA and just the development of us and where we got our alphabet and our mathematics and astrology and astronomy. It all dates back to right around that time.
Yeah, it goes a lot further than just the times of what we know from just ancient Egyptian type writings and everything. This goes beyond that. And the thing with this is there's a lot of different ways to interpret some of the accounts that are tested for in these tablets and writings. There's so many different interpretations, whether they're celestial bodies or physical beings or demigods or ethereal, whatever. There's so many different ways to look at it. So going into this, it is good to keep an open mind and also use a creative mind of your own to kind of, mix and match certain information together and think about it outside of the box as well. Because I know that's been a big thing for us when looking into this, as well as actual things that we've already discovered or learned about. You start to end up seeing the story in a different light, and you see how certain things can relate to different things, but they're similar.
Yeah, parables and allegory is obviously a big part of a lot of these ancient stories and mythologies and stuff. And it's as simple as when you watch a movie and there's a deeper meaning to it, and it's not so surface level. What's fascinating about all of this stuff is using the critical thinking part of your brain, and then, like Gio said, using your imagination. There comes a point where you're reading it and you're like, I can't tell if this is literal or if it's allegorical and symbolic. And within all of the stories, you could, because when we're talking about, the creation story and us, and then we talk about, say, an ancient civilization, an alien civilization coming onto this planet and creating us. And then if you use that as a parallel to the story of, how God created the earth and this and that, and Adam and Eve, you could take it. You can make a logical form of that story and make it literal and say, hey, I could see this being alien life forms coming here, creating it, us looking at these life forms as gods, coming from the sky and this and that, having special powers. But it's like at the same time, a lot of the subtleties and little nuances of each story can relate to, say, things like parts of the body, parts of the mind, parts of the spirit. So, and that's where it could become allegorical. And this is where it is. It's like, you know, you if you're going to enjoy and really embrace this knowledge, it's very, very, very important to kind of approach it with an open mind. But like to not take all beliefs out of it. And most of our topics really are like that. I think I've said this a number of times. So is Geo. You know, it's going into this with an open mind because we're here to transcend it. It's not about who's right, wrong, what belief is, you know, valid or not. It's about analyzing and discussing and speculating on the topic and figuring out what would be the most logical and sensible way of interpreting it, and can potentially be both.
Yeah. And using the human mind and our ways of experiencing to develop these certain perspectives that kind of bring in a broader horizon of the what ifs and what could be and what could have been. So now getting into the Ancient Sumerians, if you don't know, the Ancient Sumerians are a civilization. Well, we're a civilization back in the location of Ancient Sumer, which is now modern day southern Iraq. Yeah, between the banks of the Euphrates and the Tigris rivers. So they had a lot of findings and writings on clay tablets and also papyrus and different types of parchment as well, and other types of stone.
And cuneiform tablets being the most prevalent and most found would be, and which cuneiform would be clay. Yeah,
exactly. So the ancient Sumerian tablets, a lot of them describe the stories of the gods and their adventures, the deeds, and also conflicts which led to the creation of the heavens, the earth, and humanity. Many of the stories are interpreted as describing the planets or the describing formations of early solar systems. But as the tablets are further read and explored, they start to become read as physical beings or mythological beings, demigods, or even alien-like, while all having an involvement in human reality. That's the major basis of it.
And you could see that a lot in mythologies other than religions too,
yes.
and even movies. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Alien vs. Predator. What's ironic is there's always a lot of talk about Antarctica and what can be underneath Antarctica and stuff like that, right? Well, when you learn the backstory of Alien vs. Predator, it holds a very Sumerian-ish story on, how the Predators created this race for purposes for themselves.
That's what I'm saying. It's like where do these ideas come from to make a lot of these novel-like stories or movies and everything? And a lot of it is credited back to certain ancient history and certain stories that we gain from then. And then also, as we're going through this, you'll see a lot more and probably will think about certain teachings you have learned, or you'll make certain connections with, the ancient Greeks or the Romans, or the Hindus or whatever. They all have their certain stories that sound very, very similar. And there's something about the Sumerian writings that kind of show away how all those are connected. So like I said before, the interpretations, they change from planet creation to storytelling of gods, demigods, and physical beings and so on. And then some are just interpreted as metaphors.
Yeah, so you decide really, like we are, when we're reading these things, when we're going to listen to Gio talk about it, because he has, and I will call him out on this, saying that this was his choice. This was Gio's very, very interested in history, and so am I. I'm definitely sitting more on the speculating side of things. I did do a lot of research, but I sit here and say someone who knows of a lot of this stuff and knows some of the names and knows some of the stories, is that I sit here and speculate and allow my mind to kind of float through different. I'm not trying to label anything or trying to say define it as, it's definitely that. But what would be smart, I think, for anybody for this stuff is to find a way to relate it to other things you have learned, and then but just don't seal the deal with what it is you're listening to. Just collect the information and see what it is you grab from it, and we'd love to hear about it too. We've talked about having you guys involved in things. Eventually we'll find a way where maybe we can get you guys involved on a discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. You could always go to our Facebook, which I know we're very active there. And if you follow us on our Facebook, we also have a TDT forum that you could always join to be a member of. And that's a great place for us to have these certain discussions, and we welcome it. So that's always something you could do. Just look at us up, Daily Transcendence on Facebook, and give us a like, and you can communicate with us.
There you go.
But so, that's like you said, right, too. Like, there's a lot in here that we're going to go over that is not necessarily all factual. It's also a lot of taking certain factual things or findings and also within the writings and making certain interpretations. So if you're listening to this, make sure you keep that in mind as well. I'll try to put my best to pinpoint out certain actual factual things. And, we'll go from there.
Because there are factual things. There's some stuff about our DNA and even findings with rock formations and predating with the ice caps and stuff. I know that's a big one.
Exactly.
With the ice caps. And
it is important to kind of know a certain timeline as well in a way. But that's the other thing. There's timelines are kind of being interpreted in the best way that they can, because time has not always been the same. We know that time is a recording of certain celestial bodies and events and cycles that happen. And that's how we get time. That's where it all started. It started with astronomy and then moved into astrology. And it's the mathematics of it all. And that's a language on its own that's developed.
Right. So when actually, I know Greg Braden had mentioned, with the ice caps, why I mentioned that, and some of the rock formations and doing all the, the predating with all that stuff is, he mentions things being available or showing up as 200,000 years old. And so when they do these measurements, I do believe that they're coming from, say, if it were measured at the same, like around the same type of speed, or if things were moving exactly the same, which I do believe that obviously it wouldn't be too much of a change. I know of earth glitches and like the spin of the earth kind of changing, and obviously planets can be moving in different ways, but a lot of the facts they lay out definitely goes off kind of like they're working backwards. So when they say something's 200,000 years old, it's probably around that. So it is, say, that old. You can't discredit that it's that old. Obviously it's just going to be, it's more speculative though.
Yeah, it's within a range.
Exactly. So speculation is always key, but it's also, like we're saying, understanding that there are facts laid out in here that connect the story, which makes it so interesting.
Yeah. And just to give you a kind of brief overview of the concept, take it on the scale of, this is going based off of science and archaeologists as well that have dated back, our planet from what they have observed. And you take it in the concept of 5,000 million years ago. That's a lot to try to perceive, but that's kind of the way they scaled it out. And they broke up these divisions of time, like, so from 5,000 million years ago to 4,000 million years ago, they created that as they called it the Hadean times. Then after that is the Archean, and then there's the Proterozoic age, and then you have the Phanerozoic age, and there's all divisions of time in between that as well. So where we're kind of starting off is at that beginning time of when possibly Earth had its moment of creation, how a lot of these celestial bodies had its creation. We know about Big Bang and all that as well. And, the possibility of a collapse of a star, but also the fact of, I just was showing Ray, there's this book that I picked up and started reading, and it's talking about the beginning of time. And it says, to be able to have something, there must have been a something, or maybe there wasn't a something. Maybe it was just the fact that who's to say that first initial something was just more so a mental event, and therefore it creates something. So anyway, not to go too deep into that, but you can kind of get the picture as well as that happening and the creation of, the universe and as well.
And reassuring the fact that when, like how we do, which is why, it gets more and more interesting and enjoyable when it is you're not going in on having to definitely know the exact facts and things. And just, I'm telling you, it's like, dude, my word of the day, and this happens to me all the time, is speculation. Like, it's pure speculation. It's trying to understand it to the best of our ability, but sitting there with an open mind and saying, okay, I now know that version of, what we taught you and what we've learned, because obviously information being passed to one another. And there could be plenty of other also facts and things laid out from different teachers and stuff. But, we've gone to our most reliable sources and gathered up this information, and we still sit here with you in speculation.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so much more to be learned about it, and we're in the process of it. So you're getting it in real time. So the thing I want to go back to with the Sumerians is there's a story within these ancient Sumerian tablets, and it's called the Anunnaki. It's a Sumerian tablet story that's along with others, such as like the Sumerian Kings list. And a lot of the information I'm going to go over is, yes, there are some factual things as well, but there's also an author and researcher who wrote many books on the theory of the translation, and actually went into the translation as best as he could, along with other scholars, to translate what these stories were saying and what they meant. And his name is Zachariah Stitchin. So in his explanation of the ancient Sumerian culture, there's the theory of the planet Nibiru. I'm sure some, if not most people, have heard of this concept of planet Nibiru. I think is
Planet X.
Yes, exactly. And it's an outer planet that crosses through our solar system, or apparently through long, long periods of time. And it strays really far away from the sun, which we'll get into.
Which, by the way, is normal because Pluto has a very erratic and weird orbit around the sun. So it can be a normal reality for things.
Yeah. So it's in this theory, it's said that the Anunnaki, this Anunnaki civilization, that they come from this planet Nibiru or elsewhere, such as a different star system, maybe the Pleiades, either or. So being that they come from this star system or from this planet of Nibiru, when we're looking at the certain characters in the story, it is important to start off with the main concept of where did it all start and where did it begin. In the story, we see of Enki and Enlil. Enki is also known as Ea, which is EA, which the interpretation of Ea as EA is whose home is water. It's the prototype of Aquarius, actually, and the firstborn son of Anu. And he is also the half-brother of Enlil. Now, Ea and Enki are the same person. For the sake of this, we can use Ea as an interpretation as a planet, and then Enki as an interpretation as an actual physical being.
Right, so keep your mind open, because that's what we mean by, see, now all of a sudden people start being the same people. But now if you remember it, when you think back to, say, something like the Bible, that happened a lot. Yeah. Where all of us, there's two, I don't know if, a lot of you have to know this, but there's two creation stories in the Bible. You had the two versions of Adam and Eve, right? Yeah. And there was just different aspects that came out of each character where you're like, why in this was this, and then in that another story, the character was actually playing that. I believe that there was even a thing with Moses where they were at war and he had killed many. I don't know if it was Moses, but there was a divine character in the story, and they were involved in murder and warlike actions. I forget exactly what it was. It was actually in an Ancient Aliens thing I watched.
Cain and Abel?
No, it was I forget who it was. But regardless, that's my point is yes, he's saying this person's the same character and it's not, and that's where you or like us, you probably feel the same way. It's oh, okay, well, let's just keep hearing the story. Why is it that? We don't know either.
Yeah, and I'll keep referencing back to that.
Yeah.
But okay, so Enki, also known as Ea. Ea will use as the planet representation, like I said. Enki's the physical being representation. So like I said, Enki was the firstborn son of Anu, which I'll get into who Anu is. Who Anu? Hey, how you doing?
Hey, you know.
Hey, who knew? So Enki is also the half-brother of Enlil. Anu is also the father of Enlil. So Enki is known as the leader of the first group of Anunnaki to arrive to Earth. He is the fashioner of mankind, and he's the savior of the deluge. The deluge is just another word for the Great Flood. He's given the epithet Nudimund, which is also known as the fashioner, or Ta, which is the developer in Egyptian. Enki, also known as Lord Earth, is the father of Marduk, which I'll get into, obviously, who Marduk is as well once we go more into the story. So, in the Anu Milish, Enki is commissioned to create a certain race, whether he is commissioned from Anu or whether he's commissioned from Enlil. That's the constant debate. But before getting into that, we go into more so of this sort of bloodline and lineage or family tree, I guess you could say. So we know that Anu is the father of Enki and Enlil. But it's like, where did Anu come from? And who is Anu? Well, Anu is known to be the universal God. He is the heavenly father. In a lot of these writings, he's depicted... Well, first of all, a lot of the Anunnaki gods in these depictions from the ancient artifacts is they're depicted as these tall, bearded men, which it's pretty funny because when we get the interpretation of God, we always get that it's this old, big, bearded man. So that could be a lot of where these certain interpretations come from in even our more earlier religions as well. So Anu, being the universal father god, he is the in the Sumerian religion, the supreme being. But that's the thing, we don't know. He could be an actual being or of the planet Nibiru, or he can just be more of this sort of energy or demigod, half-bred type of thing.
Well, and to start off when we're listening to it, like, you know, how I'll give you how I approached it is I'm going to listen to it as a real story first. And if there's something that comes up that just doesn't, meld with my logic, then I just say, okay, I'm going to ask questions about that later. But for now, picture it as an actual physical,
it's a good way to go about it first.
Right. I mean, before I had mentioned to be speculative, yes, keep your mind open. Some things might not be physical. That's the point. But, we got to, source everything or, kind of go through it all first before we could decide what could be physical and what could be metaphysical.
Yes, exactly. So before Anu, there is told that the way it's categorized in the Anu Milish is that there's the beginning. Like I told you how now we categorize our whole timeline of beginning of creation and Earth and everything in these certain ways of naming them. In the Anu Milish, it's translated as there was the beginning, the prior times, and then the past times. That's how they divided up the sections of time when it comes to it. So in the beginning, in the story, is said to be these two figures, one being Apsu and one being Tiamat or Namu in some other translations. Now, Apsu is the primordial progenitor of the solar system and can also be known as the sun.
Yeah, progenitor or genesis, for life, making life.
Exactly. And also in the Sumerian religion is known to be this male type energy also associated with fresh water, and then Namu or Tiamat is known as the bitter salt water and the female side of it.
Sounds like yin and yang.
Yes, exactly.
Or Adam and Eve.
Mm-hmm. And the way they're described in the story is not so much actually physical when it comes to Apsu and Tiamat. They're also seen more so as this, like you said, yin and yang type energy, which I thought it was pretty interesting seeing them as male and female, freshwater and saltwater. It reminded me of the Vedic religion, how it explains through the teachings of the beginning with Brahma, how there was like the rivers flowed down into the four corners of the earth, creating the earth and all of that. So I thought there was a pretty cool, similar interpretation when it comes to the water parts of it.
And I thought it was interesting that they made the woman saltwater because they're always salty.
Salty and bitter. Sorry, ladies. I really thought it was going to be opposite, though. When I was going into this, I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting.
Well, a lot of men are like chicks now anyway, so they're salty too.
There we go.
A lot of men have that feminine vibe going on.
Sometimes saltier than the women.
Yeah. And what I mean by that, so it's not misconstrued, is more so emotional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Men are the ones that get more jealous and more attached and stuff. So we're the salty ones now, ladies. So right back at us.
Now the women are on their bad bitch shit and their hot girl shit.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. So after Apsu and Namu, comes Lamu and Lahamu.
A lot of moos.
And those are known to be the those are known to be the parents of Anshar and Kishar, which the thing is, though, is the East Semitic relate to Anu and Antu. Antu is the consort or the spouse to Anu. So you have always that other aspect. It's almost like the female aspect from the start of Apsu and Tiamat. It goes down to the other male aspect and the female aspect, and then so on, so on, so on. So you get Lamu and Lahamu. And those are also like I said, the parents of Anshar and Kishar, which are also known as Anu and Antu. It just depends on where you're looking. Or if you're looking from the East Semitic, then it's Anshar and Kishar. If you're looking at the Sumerian religion, then it's Anu and Antu. But anyway, so then from Anu and Antu, that's where you get Enki and Enlil. And Enki and Enlil are they're put in control as the supreme leaders of the Anunnaki. Enki being the firstborn and half-brother to Enlil. But when we're looking at Enki is known to be the god of wisdom, water, crafts, mischief, and creation. And then when we're looking at Enlil is the Sumerian god of the air, and he is actually the more powerful of any of the other elemental deities. And he's eventually worshipped as king of the gods. So you have Anu, the universal god, father, the heavenly father. He governs the heavens, earth, and the underworld and oversees it all. You have Enki, who is the more so the earth god and the creator of things on earth and the physical. And then you have Enlil, who's more of the god of the sky and the atmosphere.
Sounds kind of like the Holy Trinity.
Yes, I was just thinking that too.
Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Very similar.
So another thing that we see when it comes to interpretation, I mentioned planets before. Anu can be represented as Uranus. Also, Enlil can be too. And it's funny because when you think of astrology, you think of, what is Uranus? Uranus is...
It's God.
God of the gods.
Right, it's the leader.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So that's how you could see God of the gods can also be Enlil, and Enlil is also the sky and atmosphere god. But then also you have Anu, who's the universal god. So they both can have a representation as Uranus, but they also could have a representation of Saturn. So I also thought of it more as like, okay, Anu being the supreme universal god, more so, and on the outside has that representation of being Uranus. Whereas Enlil, especially when you know what Saturn stands for, and once we start going into the story more and you see what Enlil represents, and he represents this kind of like supreme structured power and stuff, he can be represented as Saturn
Well, I don't know if you missed this, but Saturn is Uranus' son.
There you go. And they do have a big story of the whole where their story collides with the whole Greek mythology of Kronos, and that whole thing. And then another thing that I've noticed was there was a representation of Enki, the earth god, being more so depicted as Mercury.
Yeah, and we were saying before, me and him were discussing it before we started recording. Was they're half brothers, Enlil and Enki, and Gemini or Mercury, even Virgo, anything mercurial or just Mercury, the planet itself, is the mythology of it. Just astrologically, is of the twins. Or brothers. If you go to Greek, there's Castor and Pollux, and they are brothers, but they're half brothers because one's of a divine energy and one's of an earthly. That sounds very similar to that. I feel like that's another correlation, and it just sounds like a lot of these are just so intertwined to where obviously we're nowhere near the answer, or at least the solid understanding of it. But yeah, there's just some more parallels for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So further going into the Anunnaki story, Enlil is known to be the keeper of the tablets of Destinies, which contain the fates of both gods and eventually humans as well. So who are and what are the Anunnaki? Well, one thing I want to point out is that the Bible speaks of beings called the Nephilim. And in Hebrew, that translates to fallen ones, or as Zechariah Stitchin loosely translated it as those who came down. So these can be considered as the same beings as the Anunnaki. So the Anunnaki, believed to be descendants of Anu, who is the Heavenly Father, Enki and Enlil are the prominent leaders of the Anunnaki. There's an inconsistency in the number of Anunnaki that there were, especially when going through the Anu Molish. There's a small handful of gods that are introduced, like Tiamat, Enki, Marduk, Enlil, so on. But Marduk is known to be the son of Enki. So he is a younger generation from Enki and Enlil. He is also known to be the half-brother of Enlil. And Marduk is said to have placed 600 gods on earth and 300 in the heavens, and there's no explanation of who and why and where they came from, but we'll circle back to this in a bit. So the ancient Hittites identified the Anunnaki as the oldest generation of gods who were at some point overthrown and banished to the underworld by the newer generation of gods, which is partially described in the Anu Molish itself. And this also reflects the mythological Greek Titan stories.
The pantheons.
Of being overthrown by younger pantheons.
Right.
Exactly.
Yep.
So there's a passage in the Bible in Genesis 6:4 where it says, "The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterwards, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown." So the Bible describes that they were the offsprings of the sons of gods, these Nephilim, and they were also the daughters of men. So essentially, this kind of personifies them as these beings like demigods or hybrids of gods and humans, which we see in Greek mythology, a lot of those types of stories, such as like Hercules, and his father was the god Zeus, and his mother was the mortal woman of Alcimede. But this could also be a mistranslation of an archetype of a metaphor as well. So the story from Stitchin, as far as the Anunnaki and the whole reason behind their existence and everything, goes such as that planet Nibiru was inhabited by life, and it was the dominant species. They were bipedal in stature and they had evolved consciousness. They were said to be anywhere from 10 feet to 15 feet tall, and this relates to the various levels of consciousness as well when it comes to when you're looking at these certain temples that were built in the ancient Sumerian area, as well as Egypt as well. But they were not immortal. They just had exceptionally long lifetimes, or the life timeline of these beings are not relevant to our concept of time. So you have to kind of as well keep that in mind too. So it was said from Stitchin that their lifespan was anywhere from 360,000 years to 500,000 years, and that's Earth years. Other scholars like Lawrence Gardner, he estimated at like 50,000 years. But anyway, they're depicted, like I said, as tall, bearded men, sometimes reptilian-like or humanoids or even bird-like. We see a lot of certain ancient artifacts that have like these reptilian-type humanoid statues and carvings. And Stitchin made the claim that he believed that the bird-like one, like we think of Thoth, but these type of bird-like, interpretations, that it was just actually some sort of space helmet. I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah.
Like
yeah,
bird-like space helmet.
Right, yeah, but I guess it makes more sense if it's a helmet, or maybe they're really bird heads. It could be, we don't know what, any other type of life form from another planet, or another dimension, we don't know how they're going to manifest. So
exactly.
that could potentially be it. If we were thinking somewhat logically nowadays, if we didn't have much of an imagination, which a lot of people don't, but it could be a helmet or it could be a head.
Yeah. And it'd be interesting to hear what other people hearing this, what their sorts of ideas and interpretations can be of this.
Yeah. I would say, I put in the back of my mind is I'll consider it, and maybe it's something symbolic.
Yeah. So, the main predominant interpretation of them were these tall, bearded men versions, and they were like pretty much titans.
Which obviously we know we've heard many of those types
many
of stories
of that.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So this depiction, like I said, gave us the most common Christian image of God. Stitchin wanted his theory to relate more so to the Bible. So he didn't want them to have this reptilian-like feature, because the reptilian feature kind of went into the biblical form of the serpent, and we know what the serpent represents in the Bible as being Satan or the devil or this opposing force. There's also a lot of theories of them being shapeshifters, and it gives rise to a popular theory that they can still be among us. That's where you get that whole that Draco type reptilians, that they live among us, like the Queen and stuff like that.
Yeah, and royal bloodlines, and also that there is a Draco star system. Mm-hmm. So that even gives the idea of, well, wherever that term came from, and where they would, obviously it could have been that these beings are from that star system too. Mm-hmm. So you got the bloodlines, you got the types of star systems that they could be coming from, and the fact is many people they call David Icke or those types of people, they call them crazy because, where do you get the idea of reptilian or shape-shifting? Well, it's written in these stories.
That's what I'm saying. They could be, like I said, there's so many different depictions of what these characters can be, whether it's allegorical or whether, like I said, physical beings or planets and stuff. We said how Anu could even be depicted as Uranus. And also something that I discussed with Ray was the fact that, how is it that we, what if these planets that we see are actual physical manifestations of a consciousness on its own?
I told him it's not that crazy. I've even thought about it in that form too. Mm-hmm. Meaning if there's other dimensions, or because think about it, I relate it to dreaming. When you sleep, you go to a whole nother place, and if you're lucid dreaming, you can control these things. So it does seem as if it's another realm, and there's plenty of terms, that they consider the dream world to be like the astral plane, and that it's a whole nother realm. So, maybe in this 3D world, things have another form in another dimension. So like a planet being maybe a very powerful being in the next dimension up. And that's why they're considered, say, gods or things like that, because there's another story going on in another dimension, and it just happens to be in this dimension. It's a bunch of spinning balls in signs and representing energies and stuff like that. So, and it's very outlandish and crazy, but so's life. You know, the fact is that I'll always relate back to we're sitting on a ball of water, floating around a ball of fire, and it's all crazy crap. Like we're literally spinning in the middle of a void and nothing, and we're all here right now. So why call something like that not possible?
That's what I'm saying. We can't dismiss a lot of these certain perspectives or theories on things because of the fact that when really thinking about things, the word that it's an understatement, but shit's crazy.
It is.
It really is.
I mean, that's why I actually had to stop smoking weed, because when I would smoke weed, things got too real. And I know a lot of people say they either get paranoid or they overthink or get anxiety. For me, it was I got so in touch with the thoughts of that, like the thoughts of life and reality, where I was almost like, man, I'm in this. I felt like a little disconnected from the 3D world, where I was like, I'm in this body, and how did I get here? And I know we've all thought about that, but when you really think about it, like you have to get down to the nitty gritty of processing it and saying, wow, really think about it. And it is crazy. And we definitely, I won't say take it for granted, but I definitely more so say that I don't think we practice the art of deep thought enough, and not like deep thought, like obviously we all have deep thoughted moments and daydreaming and stuff, but when you really go into that shadowy, you know, dark side of understanding life, it's like when you really break it down, man, it's all weird. So you cannot, you can if you'd like, go ahead, but I would recommend it, not discounting or discrediting any of it. And these are archived, you know, stories and things written in history and found from other civilizations. So it's amazing to think that a lot of this can be real and things can be interdimensional and there could be shape-shifting aliens walking around. I mean, it does sound crazy, but man, if life's that interesting, and wow, I don't mind being alive right now to discover, to be around for discovering all this stuff, because that's amazing. Why wouldn't you want it to be that way? That's why I never understood people get like real ass hurt over if you speculate these ideas, because it's like, dude, that would be the coolest.
Well, it shatters people's reality, right, and they get, it triggers them because they're in their own thought process and beliefs on things.
I think that's where the dark side of religion comes into play. Yeah, because then they're widely
indoctrinated on us.
Exactly.
Even if you don't even necessarily follow certain religions, especially to a T or anything and stuff, there's still that indoctrinated belief that religions have also put into our science as well, into our concept of understanding things as well. So, but yeah, so back to the Sumerian tablets, Stitchin, widely translated as the Anunnaki, were these evolved, technologically advanced beings that lived on the planet Nibiru. And these beings had the same advancement as we have today, or slightly more. So 450,000 years ago, after the event between Nibiru and Tiamat, which was more so the fact that there was this time, it was said that there was this time as far as like, I think like 7 generations since the beginning of Nibiru, which that one is, it's a very kind of skipped over information in a way, I feel like. But during these 7 generations of Nibiru coming to fruition, as well as the 7 generations of these beings on Nibiru that were in charge, there was a lot of like the way we deal with today in our world, planetary change, society, how we're gonna, technological advancements and everything and stuff, climate and all that. So there was a lot going on, and this also brought on a certain hierarchy and separation within their own civilizations. So the Anunnaki had problems with their planets and their atmosphere because it's, Nibiru's orbital journey to and from the sun. So the planet experienced extreme cooling went further away from the sun because it had such a large orbit, and it was starting to become less habitable. They then came up with the science to heat the planet for longer periods of time when far away from the sun. And their way of doing this was the idea of releasing granulated gold, releasing granulated gold particles into the atmosphere in order to create almost like a greenhouse effect. It was to reflect some of the harmful radiation, but also that when they were further away from the sun, the heat that they got from when they were closer to the sun would kind of more so be trapped within their ozone layer.
And it would actually, I just thought about this too. It would make sense that they use gold not only for all those reasons, but gold is known to purify.
Yeah.
So if they did trap, say, the heat and the air and the energy on the planet, then it being somewhat of a vibration of gold,
yes,
then you would think, well, if they're living off the same air and they're this and that, and the energy and all that from the sun that they've gotten, like, wouldn't it either, get stale or run out?
Yeah.
Well, the gold would purify it and keep, some sort of circulation. And that is speculation, by the way, because I don't know if that's fully true, but that's what gold is considered in alchemy to be a purified energy.
Yeah, absolutely. And then on top of that, gold is a more natural, softer and lighter metal. So therefore, it will be able to sustain itself up into the atmosphere without dropping and falling because it is lighter, especially when it's ground up. And it is a softer metal as well. And I think, it's less of a toxicity too, probably. That's my own kind of speculation too. I mean, think about it. We have where they make, what do you call it? We use it in certain, we can make edible gold. We've made edible gold.
Yeah. And like, silver too. Isn't there like supplements?
Supplements.
Colloidal silver.
But I've seen they've done things where it's like gold truffles on something.
Oh yeah.
It's like really thin or something like that, and it's actually made of partially with gold. So that's how you could see that being a thing as well.
Yeah, and I ended up gathering up the Atrahasis. It's tablet 1. So after you're done with describing, all these reasonings, I do have a part of the tablet I want to read.
Okay. So this idea to granulate the gold and put in their atmosphere in order to survive long journeys away from the sun and space was something that they really were putting to fruition, and they brought it to the hierarchies that they had to go to at this time. And it's funny because similar science theories are used today for our Earth. We see chemtrails and weather balloons, and, they're releasing certain metals up into our atmosphere to deflect the sun from harmful radiation reaching Earth, and also to patch up parts of our ozone layer. So It makes you wonder, like, where did that come from?
Where that's more, it's like more scientific information that could have been passed down for a millennia. And the thing is too, is this goes out to all the conspiracy theorists. Let me just throw this out there is, and I'm with you guys on, the fact that, chemtrails and certain things can be bad and probably are. And someone like, Mr. Dates or things like that, we hear all these little things about, I won't get too deep into it right now, but you technically don't know that there could potentially be a good reason for certain things. And obviously I'm more on the side of things probably are a little harmful.
Yeah, I mean, but the execution might not be great or really actually good.
Well, think if they have to hide this stuff. Let's say they don't want to have upheaval and people go crazy because, things that maybe they're keeping away for our own good, for more of the lower consciousness that exists on the planet.
Yeah.
So they have to kind of be wary of people that aren't ready for it. So they're doing certain things, and potentially, so please don't crucify me for this, but more so the fact that certain things can be done for a reason, and it's being kept in secret for not only bad reasons, but for good reasons.
Yeah, to keep the order, if you will.
Yeah.
So, with this idea now, the Anunnaki started mining for gold on their own planet, but gold on their planet was actually very scarce. So, in that, and you could imagine there's a lot of panic going on. I mean, look at us now. We're saying how we're like 2 minutes away from the whatever time clock that we use until, it's irreversible for us, climate change or whatever that they say, there's a panic on it. There's division because of it as well. So that also was something that was occurring during that time too. And also there was other ideas being put out at that time. Was they also were in control of certain nuclear type energy as well. Because they were very technologically advanced. Like during that time, we could say that they were as technologically advanced, if not more technologically advanced than we are today. So,
I mean, history does repeat itself.
Yeah. So the other, just a real quick other idea of it was the fact that a lot in the Anu-Malish was said about their volcanoes on their planet, and apparently their volcanoes helped create a certain sustainable atmosphere as well, because of the fact that, when the eruption would happen, it would create a cloud, and the clouds would create certain precipitation and everything. And, it would also keep like the planet insulated as well. But the thing was, I guess because they were going through such a planetary change, the volcanoes were no longer erupting or erupting as often as they needed to be erupting. So there was an idea of using their nuclear energy in order to manipulate the volcanoes to have them erupt. And they tried doing this and it wasn't working. And it further damaged their planet even more by using their nuclear energy. It kind of sounds like what we're scared of happening this day. You know what I mean? Maybe not so that we're using the nuclear energy to heal our planet and stuff, but we're using it in other ways as well.
Well, let me throw this in there because it makes me think, you have all these different cultures and areas across the planet at different times, and things are repeating themselves. So it's like, we talk about destiny and things that are bound to happen. And it's like, are these things repeating because it is part of this, like, manifestation of a similar thing constantly, and it's just this cycle that keeps going, and then it's like in breath out breath. It's like we advance only so much, and then it's gotta the pendulum has to swing. Things happen, and then it comes back again, and we learn from our mistakes constantly to come. And that's the source of evolution. And who knows? I mean, I don't know if the universe is this dark, but maybe these catastrophic events are these like it's almost like as if the earth is fasting and getting rid of all the cells and all the things that are, stale and done with, could be that, or, there's this natural cycle, or just this, this repeating of certain events, talking about nuclear energy and holding it, and the government kind of, having workers and keeping things away from people. It sounds like today,
Yeah, well, I mean, you think about the fact of why we even have nuclear energy to this day is because of the fact of, discovering uranium and realizing the uses of uranium when it comes to certain things. And it was for energy purposes. It wasn't for weapon purposes at first, but it was realized that it could be used for weapon purposes, especially on a brink of where there was a lot of, warlike energy going on during the time of those discoveries and stuff. But so they didn't have enough gold to supply the need that they needed to go through with this concept as far as releasing gold particles into the atmosphere, as well as there was also a split in the division because of the use of their nuclear energy and their technology. It wasn't agreed upon, and it also was further damaging the planet.
Yeah, and I actually, the part of the tablet I want to read actually is the translation of the happening of that. Basically, from where Gio's leaving off on this, I'm going to take it over after he's done. It's basically what's on the tablet explains the Anunnaki, what happens with the split. You got the Ajiji, which are the Anunnaki workers that they had brought here to mine for the gold and stuff. And I actually picked out the part of the story where they explain that on the tablets.
Mm-hmm. So in realizing they don't have enough gold on their own planet, they start looking for large quantities of gold in our solar system because there wasn't enough. So doing that, they found Earth, apparently. and the Anunnaki were able to travel through space, but it was thought that they were only able to travel within their galaxy. So when Nibiru would enter our solar system, the Anunnaki would deploy workers to our Earth and mine for gold. In the process, they would establish way stations on Mars, apparently, to bring the gold back to Nibiru. Stitchem believed that they built the face-like structure as well that we see on Mars as a tribute to a fallen Anunnaki who died there after playing a pivotal role in finding and mining the gold.
Right. Mm-hmm. And, you know, this is definitely probably one of the most important parts of the story. And and a lot of people, they're interested in Nibiru and stuff. And there's even there's certain theories that it's fourth dimensional, and there's all these different types of speculations on it. But it being this way would make sense. And when I first heard the story, like, oh, the aliens came here and made humans for gold. But then when I didn't realize that it's in the tablets, and that they talk about it. And when you hear the story, I mean, yes, it could sound like a mythology and some deeper meaning story, like an allegory. But if we're talking about the creation of humans and stuff, like how we got here, that's what makes it so interesting. Is the story sounds kind of movie-ish and fantasy-like up until you ask the question. Well, it's like, well, we're here though. Like it's connected to us. Mm-hmm. These beings end up being connected to the creation of humans. So that's where it kind of starts to, solidify the fact that, there most likely was a civilization here that came to do it. Was it for the gold? Were they bringing stuff on Mars? We don't know. But it definitely is true that something had to have, create this and come here for a certain reason. And in another episode, we will go into that because we want to talk about the DNA and chromosome 2, which is a big part of the story. And that's where we're gonna follow up this episode with, because we want to talk about the human body and the connection to nature and what these beings had may have brought to us and why they made us into it. This was really more for how did they get here and why, and here's the story, and here's so far what they have came up with through the tablets and stuff.
Yeah, and just in the first tablet alone, like the synopsis is how the gods, there's the story, and you could look up the tablets themselves in the translation, or even get Stitchen's book, but they talk about how the gods fled their cities as this nuclear cloud spread. Like I said before, that they were using nuclear energy to try to activate these volcanoes. Therefore, it created even more of this type of nuclear cloud that was just further harming the planet. And there was huge debates in the Council of the Gods as far as what to do, who was going to rule. There was a lot of fighting over generational bloodlines of who's in charge and all that. A big prick waving contest a lot of the times. And there was also, because of that argument and that split, it was splitting their civilization. And there was also this fateful type of decision to unleash the weapons of terror. And the weapons of terror were, and that's how it's kind of translated in these tablets to English. And the weapons of terror was this type of nuclear energy. Not necessarily even mean nuclear as we know it, more so nuclear as in this advanced type energetic technology.
It doesn't have to
stuff.
be this atomic bomb that gets dropped or anything like that, but more so, and it can involve something like explosions or whatever, but there's this energetic aspect to it. Plus, it does actually have a lot of connections to Atlantis, because the sinking of Atlantis had a lot to do with stuff like that. Had them making an electromagnetic grid with the pyramids and other aspects of that fashion, where there was a reason why there was a shift and a great flood. So this actually leads up to that.
This is why you're going to want to listen to this series as we keep going into it, because we're going to touch up on all that and root back the connections of this, and you're going to see why it's something to really take note of, because these concepts do play a big part in our origins and our creation, but also the potentials behind humans that there's like this lost connection and the ability to make that connection back. And even as we go through these stories and go throughout time, you'll end up seeing how they, as civilization and human beings were on Earth as well, there was still this constant strive with now a new destiny to make their way back to this sort of connection. And it was like almost like the destiny wasn't thought to be the destiny, but then this new type of destiny comes about, and certain alien-like beings or the Anunnaki or a Anunnaki leader was trying to maintain this new destiny as well. So there's a lot of interesting information that's going to come about this series. So definitely stick with us.
Right. And, I think as we go along, it'll get more and more clear. Because, like I said at the beginning, I'm still very surface level. We gathered up as much information as we can just as an introduction, but there is many layers, and there's, it might have just sound like a bunch of Anus and Amus at the beginning, but there's a reason why. It's almost like as if you're reading the Bible, there's reasons why you want to understand Abraham and Peter and this and that. Like those might be just names and stuff, but they end up being a big part of the story. And the deeper meanings of these stories will lie in the characters and what goes on and all that. And, with Atlantis too, I mean, that's a big turning point. My whole thing with both of these stories going from, the Anunnaki to Atlantis is, if any of this stuff is remotely true, which obviously because there is, artifacts and stuff, that means that our story has been told, the creation story and what the system has brought to us, and what, being raised as kids growing up into this new era and having our belief systems now, well, it changes everything, so why is it important? Well, it's important because it changes everything we know, and then it opens up many possibilities. And the fact is, we could be part alien, we could be extraterrestrial ourselves, and that we weren't fully from the earth. And that's groundbreaking.
That's what I mean. We talk about these limiting beliefs that we have and transcending certain knowledge and information in order to break the limits and break the barriers of these beliefs that we may have. And we've seen through scientific research and even like a lot of what Joe Dispenza talks about and everything, how we actually have the capabilities to, change, our physical reaction and reality to a lot of occurrences that we experience. And it's just by using the power of the mind and the heart.
Yeah, that's not just a euphemism. He's Joe Dispenza is a neurologist and a scientist, and he does these workshops, and he sees people. He does like brain scans as people are meditating and doing certain practices that they have figured out themselves in his organization. And he watches crazy changes. He talks about brain waves and gamma brain waves, and when people access this certain frequency of the mind, and they measure it by brainwave activity, that miracle healings start to happen, traumas get let go, because most of the New Agers and people that are starting to understand all this new knowledge, they understand really that we manifest reality through emotions. We've talked about that before. Yeah. So if you go in and understand that we're more powerful than what we are, and the fact that our emotions and thoughts and our heart field create reality, well, that entails that we're more powerful and that we are more capable than what we think. And a lot of people on the earth really, I feel like, just from the vibe I get, is they feel like we've hit a brick wall. Like there's nowhere to go. It's like, now let's just turn to the government and turn to TV and turn to other people. But yet this information's out there, and it links all the way back to 200,000 years ago to our supposed creators. So by understanding the story and the origins of it all, gives us access to the knowledge that we would need to realize our power and to realize what we really are. How do you figure out, critical thinking, right? How do you figure out a problem? You backtrack and you go to the source.
Yeah. It gives you like an understanding these stories. Like, yeah, you could probably just, get down to the nitty gritty and be like, hey, you know what? All right. I don't really want to know the whole detailed story and everything about the Sumerians or whatever and creation and stuff like that. I want to know how to start doing it today. And you can, and that's fine.
You could skip it. If you totally just actually believe in this stuff.
Yeah.
If you don't need to know history, fine. And obviously episodes like this are for the people that really do need more. For me, it's curiosity and wanting to know more because that's just who I am. And I know a lot of people are like that, but there's also people that need more facts and more
helps shed that resistance because of whatever indoctrinated beliefs or also skepticism as well.
Right. And then, I think a lot of people do run away from this kind of stuff because then they don't really want to believe that the government lied to us. They don't want to believe that there's bad people. It's funny. Sam Tripoli had said it really good on that one episode with Bonacci, where he had said, he's like, people are good people, meaning like there's people out there that don't want to believe the government lied and whatever because they're good people and they want to see others in the same light that they see themselves or that they expect people to be.
You can't blame them.
No, right. And that's my point. And, I've gotten ridiculed or yelled at for saying that, like religion could be a bad thing. Well, my point though, most of the time, and I will repeat this to the end of time because there's so many people that need to hear this, is if you don't believe beyond certain things and then you stop at a belief system because you've been told, then I believe that that's a sin. Yeah. Because you're cutting yourself off from the truth, if so. So I believe that curiosity may have killed the cat, but curiosity will open the door up too, and I find it rather important. And a fascinating story like alien beings coming to Earth and, to come look for gold because of their atmosphere in certain climates, and they had to create basically a slave race to mine gold for them. It sounds like a really crappy fantasy movie.
Yeah.
But it's amazing if it really did happen.
I mean, but also when you go into the biblical stories and stuff, I mean, look at how there was certain races of people and human beings that, were controlled by certain bloodlines or Pharisees that enslaved people for hundreds of years. And one being example is in the Egyptian times and, even in the stories of Moses, it was the Jewish, the Hebrew people, the Hebrew natives, how they were enslaved by the pharaohs, and that just goes to show that there is like this repeating factor as well. And also I think like when you say as far as like how religion can be bad, it's not necessarily like, I think this is what you think as well, is that not necessarily maybe the religion itself or like whatever, it's more
the
so
application.
And the institutionalized type of religion where, because to me it seems like a lot of them, it's like too many chiefs and not enough Indians. Everybody, there's too many people trying to say what to do, how you're supposed to do it, and all these rules or whatever, to the point where it doesn't allow the person to have that free will that they speak of.
And curiosity and wonder. And I feel like that can be it's a definite source of depression. And I'll call it out right now, that people were told to believe something, and then what happens is because you've set yourself in a certain belief system, which it's okay to believe things. It's not the point. It's a matter of when you hit the brick wall and you have nowhere else to look. It's almost like we lose our childlike imagination and the wonder we have for life because we think we know it. That's it. We know the story. We were told it. We were read it. We were said to believe it. We practiced it. We went to school with it. And it could be the truth, like I don't say it's not, but my point is if you've hit a brick wall like I did a long time ago, it was more so that the wonder and the curiosity and the understanding that the story could be so much bigger, and that the fact is we haven't hit the end of the story and we're just waiting for our apocalypse to come or someone to come back and save us. And because if that's not the truth, if it's not the truth,
it's almost like you're letting life pass you by. Because
exactly. You're missing out.
You're just kind of waiting for this end time to happen, and you could be waiting for nothing. You know what I mean? That's the thing. Instead, at least if you understand the fact that, okay, like we said, it's okay to believe those certain things are going to occur, but what are you going to do in the in-between time? There's a purpose of existing in this now, in this realm every day. There's some sort of constructive effort that needs to be done on this earth, and there is enjoyment to be had on this earth. And like I know personally, the Bible, and I know even a lot of Christians, they don't teach you that you're not supposed to enjoy life now. A lot of them, especially more so the new age, new beginning type, Christian teachings is about the fact that like God doesn't want you to be poor. It's not about being poor or not, abundant in this lifetime. You are to be abundant in this lifetime.
Yeah, well, and like I'll use this as an example. Because I understand tithing, right, and giving 10%, and a lot of these guys get on TV. This happened more in the 90s.
Yeah,
but they would get on TV and say 10% of your money, and they, poor people that are not doing great with money, and they're just looking for faith, and they're just looking for an answer and help and God to watch over them, and they're showing their adoration. A lot of those guys, by the way, were arrested for lying. And my point with that, and it goes back to my core belief on the subject of depending on an outside belief, something that's putting the power outside of you, is to still stay humble. But the fact is, if someone stripped you from your power and then you think you have to give away everything you have, that doesn't sound like a godly thing. It doesn't.
And that's the institutionalized type teaching way, because tithing also, if you really look into it in the Bible and really understand it, tithing also just means to give 10% of your day, 10% of your life and your effort and your time to God, whether it's practicing scripture, reading scripture, finding that time to connect with God, all that, like, doing your deeds, and kind of, making sure as you go through your day, you're doing things that are in benefit to not only yourself, but to
humanity.
To humanity, and then it also could be an unconscious type of thing. You're just doing things and you're acting a certain way and you're presenting yourself in life that somehow in turn is reflective of the passion that you want to see, that Christ-like passion that you want to see on the earth. And that's another thing, because you said something before about, that there's people that they want to believe the good and everything and stuff. Majority of people on earth are good.
Yep.
Do not let the media or other types of outlets or anything convince you of the bad, that most is bad, because you know what? Think about your days going through whatever and your interactions with strangers or anybody and stuff. Most of the time, your interactions with people are not bad, and people are nice and people are good. It's just the simple concept of the teacher writes on the board these multiplication things. 9 times 0 equals 0. 9 times 1 equals 9, and goes through the whole list all the way up until 9 times 9. And they get all of them right except for the last one, and they put 9 times 9 equals fucking whatever, 42 or something like that. What's a whole classroom going to do? Oh my God, teacher, that's wrong. And they're going to start pointing to that, whatever. And oh my God, but yeah, you got that wrong. Da, 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 da. And it's like, but wait a minute. What about the rest of the 8 of the problems? We got all that right. There's such a hyper focus on the bad. There's such a hyper focus on the one thing that's wrong. And why? Because it creates some sort of adrenaline. It creates some sort of excitement.
Fight or flight.
Yes, and it's also egotistical at times, too, because of who wants to be right or who wants to be the one who points out something.
Well, and we're conditioned, and I've said this before, that, from childhood, we're taught that competition is more important than, what's the other word, the C word, where we're in coordinates with each other, not even when you're complimenting the rest of the economy. Like I can't believe I'm forgetting the word, but it's, because Braden has said, it was Lipton and Braden both had said that it's not about competition, but it's more so about the
coherence.
It could be coherence. We'll just say that, but in the end, to simplify, doesn't have to be the right word. It's more so just getting the point across here. It's more so about we're being conditioned to be in competitive nature, and one of my favorite topics, by the way, with the chakras is being stuck in the root chakra, being stuck in the fight or flight, in the survival mode. And we're taught that, like if you look at the curriculum of the system and what they make us do, if the body has habits, right? If you do something every day, it becomes a habit. Well, we're taught to be better than the next and to be, to win. And we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
It might have been on the last episode.
Yeah,
but it's about to be, being better and all that. And even coming down to political beliefs and religious beliefs. And to circle back around, we're talking here still about the Anunnaki and our origins and stuff. Well, let's try and not be so competitive on who's right or what religion you need to believe, like to not be told what we need to do to win or to be good or whatever, because you've been scammed many times. But that was my point, bringing up the religious institutions, is they're taking these good people, which most people are, and they're taking advantage of them when they're already cut down. They're already, some people are already living in poverty, and you're taking, say, an 80-year-old woman who lost her husband. She's a widow, she doesn't see her grandparents much, and all she has to do, because no one comes and visits her, is she watches TV, and one of these preachers come on and say, you need to give 10% and God will save you. And a lot of people like that are out there, and hey, it's gullible and it's nonsensical sometimes, but you can't blame them because they were conditioned. They were conditioned not only to be competitive, but to put the power outside of themselves. And when you learn of the origin story and you learn of like the Anunnaki and you learn about how maybe we could have been lied to about our origins and stuff, it just makes you, it's good for you because you've now questioned where you've gotten your morals and your values and your beliefs and things like that. Like some of you might not want to hear that we've been lied to, but guess what? What if you want to help that 80-year-old woman and you want to help other people and stuff? Well, stop putting the power outside of you. Understand that we potentially could have been created as very powerful beings and creators where we can affect the whole world just with ourselves, with our beliefs, with our, getting in touch with ourselves makes us more powerful, because then we start to manifest a better life, and then the happiness starts to become contagious, so very, very important, I think, to remember that. Why would we be talking about creation story? Why do we consider that we could have been being lied to? Is because we want everyone to come into their own power and have the truth. I think we all deserve that. We all deserve freedom on this planet, and we all deserve the truth.
Yeah. And that's absolutely right, because even when you think about the biblical form, it's like, it's almost as if we were depicted, starting from Genesis, that we were destined to live out aimlessly in paradise in this garden, with just, non-questioning anything, without a knowing, just being, right? And that sounds great. But then also, as the story goes on, it seems like, the banishment from the garden and everything, this all stuff we're going to get into and really break it down, and the allegoricals of it and everything.
Well, yeah, with the Garden of Eden, I feel like that you can look forward to that on the next talk. We'll bring up the DNA factor with the Anunnaki, and what could have happened with chromosome 2, and how they could have maybe flipped the story of the serpent and the Garden of Eden.
Yeah, and that's something that really caught my attention. But also, like, the thing was, and then after that, it seemed like we were almost destined for a life of being enslaved, and I'm talking even just through the biblical teachings in the form of it. It was like almost like we were destined to be enslaved and damned, and we upset God, and that humanity was going to be punished and everything. And then we see how the destiny changes to that it was, we were, there was a repent, there was a saving done to us, that we were released from capture. And I'm using that as allegorical, the enslavement and everything. Like, we were,
I would say spiritually. Yeah,
we were released from that enslavement destiny and brought into a new destiny and stuff. And then when you go into even the Sumerian story and the Anunnaki and everything, it shows the same thing. It shows that there was like almost like this, we were, destined to have this aimless thing and just be an instrument of these higher beings. But then it was like, then all of a sudden destiny changed into the fact that we were turned into having some sort of free will and knowledge and knowing and being able to learn and trying to make sure that we didn't fall into that old destiny, and then the destiny changes again. And this is a repetitive type of repetitive type of pattern that we're seeing in all these stories as well. And this is why we think it's great to explore these multiple stories and theories as well, because it gives you a more broader overall understanding of us.
Yeah, why cut off yourself and everyone else? And hey, do you want your family to be happy and the people around you? Do you want to live in some sort of type of paradise? Well, guess what? This paradigm we're living through, or obviously I think exiting out of, that's going to be the way we change it. It's by changing the way you look at things. Actually, you know what? I'm glad I said this. Wayne Dyer. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And you could see that on a metaphysical level, meaning manifestation wise, like put out different energies, attract different things, or just psychologically. If I see the good in everything, truly, the places I end up in and the people I end up around are going to change, and it's just naturally going to happen. So, boxing yourself into these things and not you don't have to hear the Anunnaki story, but if your paradigm is not shattered yet and you still believe we're only 6,000 years old, and that's fine. Okay. I would say then if you want to stick with that, it's okay. But if you go and do the research and hear us out on these stories and understand it, that there is a deeper truth. And if you are depressed, or if you're miserable, or not even, let's say you're just stale, something like this, understanding it goes deeper and that there's more to it, will liven you up again. When you watch a series or movies, you can only watch the same season over and over again so many times before you realize this does nothing for me. I've seen this 100 times. The emotion's gone. I know what they're going to say. I know what's going to happen. Well, you're kind of making life that way if you've lost that zest, and you just, I have my beliefs. I went to church, or I went to this. I went to, Tibet and sat with the monks, and I chose my belief, and that's it. But I'm miserable, or I'm stale. You have no life left or spirit. It's like, well, these types of things you don't realize can knock on the door to a whole new world. And wouldn't you want to know if we were powerful or not to create our own, to create our own destiny? Yeah. Maybe someone had written it out for us, but maybe it is a test from God that, I'm going to write this, I'm going to give this story to these people, and then I'm going to have them analyze it. And then I want them to be like me. So I want them to not say go against my word, but to redefine themselves. I gave them destiny, a predestiny, but are you going to choose happiness, or are you going to choose misery? And maybe by changing the story, or just changing our minds and the way we approach things, could potentially be the answer. We don't know. So we shouldn't smite the fact that this could be the way. Yeah, you could see the capabilities of a bigger resilience in mankind on its own. And that's not to say that these demigods or whatever, these portrayals of the Anunnaki, is something that needs to be worshipped or anything, or opposite, or needs to be looked at. Yeah, it's definitely not that. It's about the fact that it kind of goes into more of a story that also kind of goes in line with the Bible as well. If you want to look at it that way, that there is this source creation being, and it shows this fractal patterning of this type of emergence of different civilizations and different beings and stuff like that. And it shows the fact that, if you want to believe in the higher power source, God, that there is a constant interchanging, and nobody can understand what, nobody can sit there and know definitively of what this ultimate intelligent source, God's wants, needs, or expectations are. You know what I mean? And therefore, it releases you from this type of fear state of being like, oh my God, I'm not doing this, and I should be doing this. And we're constantly comparing ourselves to either certain other people or certain ways of being, or our old selves and what we want to be. And it's like that comparison can get us trapped inside of our minds to be like, I'm not doing it enough. I'm not worthy. I'm a piece of shit. I was going to say unworthiness is a big result of a lot of religions. And it creates a lack of action. It creates a lack of feeling abundant wherever you are now. And you think you're far away from whatever you want. Having that feeling will really keep you far away, will actually keep you far away from
what it is you desire in life and the happiness that you're searching for.
And I think, let's say I'm going to hypothetically make myself a creator right now, and I make a little like civilization of things. I somehow could take a planet and I can make things. When I'm watching the planet grow, if these things I consider my children, because we've all heard the term children of God, right? I want to see them be happy. And if I haven't given them the straight answer, like I'm making it a guessing game, and it's supposed to be a game of faith, and well, I'm watching you, and you have to, one, find out who I am by guessing or by scripture, and I'm going to hide these certain things, and I see my creations not getting it yet, or that it's not really properly working. Like so many times we've had catastrophes and a lot of death and whatever. I would be like, I don't think I want, I don't think he would want that of us. I think he or she or it, the Elohim, whatever you want to call it.
It's like it's wanting its creation to lean on the fate of what God created. Like it's just seeing the beauty of that it is,
right,
and not falling into the trap of I am this, or it is this, and therefore you have the ability to define certain things and everything, but that can stray away from the origin of or even the reason behind things. And it's like, it's not that you have to understand exactly what the reason is behind a creation or something like that. It's just the fact of acknowledging the creation, acknowledging the remarkable phenomenon that it is on its own, and understanding that if that creation is possible, that anything is possible. And yeah, like you're saying, if you're taking it from the perspective of this Elohim or God or source, and watching its children fall out of that appreciation for creation, and therefore trying to take it in their own direction, and they're creating their own destiny, which they are going to do, it's like, okay, that's fine too, I guess. But in maybe God's conscious mind or intelligence, it's like God understands which way that's going to go. But God also can know that at the end of the road, at the end of their life, or at the whatever, it's going to lead to some sort of thing that's going to make them look back again.
Right, exactly. And see, if we're children of God, which we are, right, that means we're aspects of God, and we are creators ourselves. And there's a lot of teachings that are more recent in the past 100 years or so, that, a lot of self-help things and, self-discovery books and all that claim that we create our own world and all that. And it's like, if we're going by the past and its stories, and we're still living by that, don't you think we're going to repeat all the things that those things have taught us? Like, maybe it's time for us to evolve, and God's sitting there going, okay, you already understood those morals and values. That was that age. That was that, whatever. You understand creation. You understand to pay it adoration and love it like I love you. And okay, it's mutual. But then at the same time, it's like, well, everything is a child of light. Everything is light and photons and made of God, as we would say, right? Because quantum physics says that. Like, everything is of source. Well, then wouldn't this mean that we have to love not only ourselves and our family and our loved ones, but even our enemies? And the fact is if we're smiting one another for beliefs and all that, we are not appreciating the life that was given to us and the other things that are in it. To learn to appreciate everything and to love everything unconditionally, regardless if you prefer it or not. Because that's like my favorite kind of twist on the whole thing is, instead of saying I don't like something, it's more just of a non-preference. You learned this religion. Well, I don't really prefer to see it that way. I respect it, and I love you for it. Good. If you're happy, I'm happy. And it's those simple philosophies that should be applied. Like, it's more simple than what it is. And these ancient stories and all, they hold a lot of, important factors and knowledge and stuff, and even the religions. But it's also, I think, a travesty and a sin to condemn and to separate from one another because we think a different image or different thought or different word. I find it very important that if you go back and understand the source of all things, and you understand the story, okay, but then to bring it to your present reality. And then how is this shifting you to be more of an enlightened and divine person and more loving and having that unconditional love reflect out into the world. And Age of Aquarius is known for knowing, knowing. It's not about guessing anymore. It's knowing.
And when you're looking at a lot of these concepts or stories and stuff, you see how they always have some sort of aspect of the hero's journey, whether it's an actual being or mythology or whatever it may be. It always has this sort of interpretation as being the hero's journey, which we see that a lot in the Bible. We see that a lot with
Movies.
characters in different stories,
every
movies,
show,
video games, everything and stuff, which is funny because in later episodes in this series, we're also going to show how the Epic of Gilgamesh actually ties into all this as well.
Oh, it's basically a parallel to Moses.
Yes, exactly. And you know what's funny, though, because you also could look at it as the hero's journey is also a representation of energy on its own. There's there's an accumulation of abundance and conservation of this energy and stuff, but anything overdone, eventually it has to fall apart and be corrupted and destroyed in order to create a new rebirth. So that's something that'll go into it as well.
Right. Yeah, so,
Yes.
we've approached an hour and 35 minutes.
Wow.
Look at
Okay.
that. I mean, I know for a lot of podcasts, a lot go, for 2 hours, 3 hours, even 4. From my perspective, I can only get so much of facts and all that before I start to trail. So we really do try and stick to say around between an hour and 2 for you guys. And that's how we really have decided to break up a lot of our episodes. So I think we should really kind of to wrap it up for this one, and you guys at least have an idea. You've heard some of the characters from the ancient Sumerian stories. It's not, it's only the tippy top. We want to go deeper and deeper into it, and definitely get more, to elaborate more on the, a lot of the moos and the oohs and the ishes and all that. And really, we want to connect other religions and stuff and really break it down for you guys for the, the parallels and why we would want to dive deep into this. So I had mentioned before I wanted to read just that tablet. So, over time, many of the ancient cuneiform records, they were the clay tablets, they were damaged or lost, right? So they left only fragments and clues today that could tell us what occurred thousands of years ago. But to read the compelling evidence, it directly mentions the Anunnaki many, many times. And this first tablet of the, it's the Atrahasis. So Atrahasis.
The Atrahasis.
Atrahasis.
Yeah.
Okay. So the Atrahasis was tablets, one of, I think, the 14?
Yeah.
Okay. So this was tablet 1, and we were talking about the mining for gold and the Anunnaki. So this is from the tablet. When the gods, instead of man, did the work, bore the loads, the gods' load was too great. The work too hard, the trouble too much. They took and cast the lots, the gods made the division, and went up to the sky, and Enlil took the earth for his people. The bolt which bars the sea was assigned to far-sighted Enki. When Anu had gone up to the sky, and the gods of the Apsu had gone below, the Anunnaki of the sky made the Ajiji bear the workload. And so I'll break that down for you real quick. So basically, Enlil comes down, and they take their own people, their workers, their servants, and they start mining the earth. So they've made the earth for his people, and they've come down with the Ajiji, which that's the workers, and they start mining. So the Ajiji gods had to dig out canals, had to clear channels, the lifelines of the land. For 3,600 years, they bore the excess, hard work night and day. They groaned and blamed each other. Come, let us carry Enlil, the counselor of the gods, the warrior, from his dwelling, and get him to relieve us from our hard work. Now cry battle. So what that says, and very weird translation, by the way, as I'm reading that, it's very, very odd. But so the Ajiji seem to be getting frustrated.
Yeah. And
they choose to, after mining for 3,600 years, they're like, we're fed up.
Yeah.
And they start to revolt. They don't want to do it anymore. So let us mix fight with battle. The Ajiji set fire to their tools, put aside their spades for fire. They begin war. When they reach the gate of warrior Enlil's dwelling, because they're fighting Enlil because he was ruling the that class and he was their leader. It was night, the middle watch. Ikor was surrounded. Enlil had not realized. Enlil sent for Anu to be brought down to him. Enki was fetched into his presence. Anu, king of the sky, was present. Enki, king of the Apsu, attended. All the great Anunnaki were present. So basically, all this upheaval happened, and you have Enlil, who had sent for Anu, and Anu being the Sky Father, and saying basically, "Hey, Dad, these people are, they're starting to revolt. What do I do?" And Enki was the one who had supposedly fetched for Anu. So the Ajiji declared, "Every single one of us declare war. We have put a stop to the digging. The load is excessive. It is killing us." So like any normal people or beings going, "Hey, we've worked and we're friggin' tired, dude. We're done. You get your own, do the work yourself." So Anu made his voice heard and spoke to the gods, his brothers. What are we complaining of? Their work was indeed too hard. Their trouble was too much. Ea made his voice heard and spoke, "Let us create a mortal man so that he may bear the yoke, the work of Enlil. Let man bear the load of the gods." So right there, they're saying, "Oh, okay, fine. Well, our workers are done. They're spent. They've rebelled. So let's create another worker. Let's design something. Then let's create a workforce for ourselves. Maybe ones that aren't as free-thoughted or more self-aware than this." So Nintu made her voice heard and spoke, "On the 1st, 7th, and 15th of the month, I shall make a purification by washing. Then one god should be slaughtered. Then a god and a man will be mixed together in clay. Let a ghost come into existence from the god's flesh, and let the ghost exist so as not to forget the slain god."
And with all that, that's where in this next episode, we are going to further continue, and we'll go into how even that idea really transpired and also came to Enki. And then also, there's also stories of how it came to Enlil and then was passed to Enki as well. And also the slaying of the god. There is another character as far as that of who that slain person was or being was, and that's all stuff that's going to go further. And
this leads to the DNA and all that, which is why I'd love to end this with that, because I figure we're going to go into the DNA talk, chromosome 2, and the scientific discoveries that there's a part of our DNA that seems to be fused inorganically, and it would go right in line with the tablet 1 of the Atrahasis. Okay, so tablet 1 of the Atrahasis, it provides some of the most detailed information we have, for the origin of our story, as well as actually the identity of the gods of Apsu and who they really were. So we're going to definitely dive deeper into that, and we'll have a lot more information following up. And an hour and 42 minutes in, we totally appreciate the fact that you've made it this far, and we're doing our job and trying to keep up on all the research and information so we can keep bringing you guys more content. We're going to have a lot more stuff on YouTube. We're going to have plenty of more episodes, more on a consistent basis. We had hit a little bump in the road because Gio had went on a vacation, which he deserved, and he was gone for a while. I got distracted by earthly things. To watch my football team win's important, and I'm not one of those people who was brainwashed by the media or by sports. I used to play sports and all that, so I love it. So I took a little time off, but knowing that the rest of this year we're riding the wave, and we want to have content consistently on most of the platforms that we have. And we want to hear from you too. So if you have any topics or questions or things that you want us to talk about or reflect on, we totally want to hear you. So for now, email us, join our Facebook group, go like our pages, go like on all our social media. You can DM us on Instagram if you'd like. You know, we're pretty consistent with checking all of it daily. So whatever way you choose, we'd like to hear from you. And we really we respect all of your beliefs and all these things, but we truly appreciate the fact that you take the time to take these adventures with us and open up your mind, and that our intentions are clearly just pure curiosity and wanting to, you know, expose the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So with that being said, just stay tuned for the next part of this discussion. And as we further journey into this series, so much information to be had. So we'll leave you off with that.
Yeah. Not as easy as we think when we dive. It's not. There's so much, and to go in what order should we tell you guys things. It's not easy. So we'll get better as we go along.
Yeah.
I know that. So bear with us. Take what you can from our talks. Keep joining us on these journeys.
Yeah.
And I promise you, we're going to all figure out the truth together and transcend all of this information.
Exactly. And like you said, reach out to us. If there's something that you are confused about or need further explanation, we could do that. All right. And let's have some discussions. So thank you all for tuning in. Like we said, make sure, reach out to us, like, share, and follow our stuff. And we'll be back very soon.